Hello there people, welcome to The Break. My name is Patricia Bright. You are over here where we give you the tools and resources to learn, grow, navigate life like a boss and make money moves in the process. I hope you are doing well. So I'm not ashamed to say I'm a numbers girl. I love numbers. I feel like I see them, they make sense to me. I find them funny, flattering. Yes, I do. But I completely understand that numbers can be a very confusing thing if they're not broken down in a way that is bite-sized and understandable. So I wanted to bring a series to you called Simple Maths, where we are going to break down the numbers of everyday scenarios. We're going to get a clearer picture of how much things actually cost over time when it comes to everyday personal finance scenarios, from buying a house to building the dream life to investing. We're just gonna deep dive into the numerical beauty of numbers, if that even makes sense. So one of the things I wanted to cover was the true cost of buying a property, particularly in certain regions, based on the average incomes and salaries and expenses that people are actually living by, to give people a true perspective of what things actually cost. So in today's episode of Simple Maths, I wanted to talk about the true cost of buying a property in London on an average salary and how many years that would take versus Texas. Now I'll get into why I've picked these two cities. London, of course, that is where I'm from, that is my city. I'm a South Londoner for life. It is beautiful, even with all the pollution, the grey skies and the attitude. I wouldn't exchange this place for anywhere else. I love being a Londoner. It's one of the places where in distance it isn't far, but with the traffic and the annoying public transport, it will take you 3.5 hours to get to the other side of the world, which is basically North London. North London is basically Mordor. Now, when it comes to property prices, London is one of the most expensive cities in the world. There are garages that go for £100,000. A garage, yep, a garage. And yet you can get 12-bedroom mansions that go for around 54 million. If you've got a few billion hanging around, you might want a property like that. But you can also get 1-bedroom properties for around £64,000. That is if you want to live on a boat on the Thames. London has a lot of disparity, lots of glamorous opportunities, as well as stuff that is on the more affordable, cheaper end of the spectrum. But it is definitely one of the most expensive places to live in the world. And I thought I would compare it to Texas, the deep south. I don't know if Texas is actually deep south, but to all my American followers, I've got you. One of the first places I ever visited in America was Texas. I went there as a teenager. I remembered everything being really, really big. I visited an auntie's house and I was like, you actually live in a mansion, what the hell? And I remember being so surprised at how big and beautiful homes were in comparison to the pokey flats that we lived in London. So Texas is one of the second largest states in the whole of the USA, and you might get a ranch or a McMansion. You get a lot of square footage for your money. Now, when it comes to property, there are of course properties that are on the cheaper end of the spectrum, as well as really expensive. One of the most expensive properties to have sold in Texas, which was Crespi Hicks Estate, which had an asking price of $135 million. Wild. But you can also get moderately sized, beautiful family homes anywhere from $290,000 to $400,000. These are stunning. I've seen them. Okay, so now we are going to do the numbers, the breakdown, the simple math. Let us look at the average price of a property in London. So the average cost of a property in London is circa £666,000, which is about $876,000. That is the average, given really high and really expensive properties versus the lower side of the spectrum. Now, to get a mortgage in this day and age, you need at least a 10% deposit, which would set you back £66,000. But being realistically, in the times that we're in and what lenders actually want, you're more than likely to need a 15% deposit, which would then set you back £99,000. For the sake of this video, I'm just gonna go with 10%. So let's take away the average cost of the property, which was £666,000, from the 10% deposit that you'd need to put down. That would leave you with a mortgage of £599 400. Now, to actually be able to get a mortgage from the lender, you need to earn between 4 to 5 times the amount that you're borrowing. So to be able to buy the average property, you'd need to be on a salary of at least £119,000 a year if they were going to go with 5 times the amount of your income. But if they were going to go with 4 times the amount of your income, you'd need to be on a salary or an income of £149,000 and 850 pence. That's a high salary. Now, why this is a big problem is because the average earning and the average salary of those living in London is actually £40,000 a year. Awkward. And this is why I love maths, okay? Let's just calculate this. Now, let's ignore the fact that the lender probably would not be able to lend you any money or that much money you would need to earn a property or the average property in London. Let's just work out how many years it could take you in London to save the £66,000 that you would need as a deposit. And we're gonna do this by taking into consideration the average spread that is out there. So let's assume the average salary of 40,298 pence. Now, after taxes, the take-home pay is about £30,735. Now, the average living cost in London per year is around £10,000, which is just over £800 per month, but this does not include rent. Now, rents can vary in cost, but the average rent that you would be spending per year in London is about £15,000 a year or £1,250 per month. Now, that brings total expenses of an average person living in London to £25,000 a year. Now, taking into consideration those costs, the average cost of living in London against someone's salary, they should be able to save at least £5,000 per year, which is about £478 on a monthly basis. Now, that isn't with going on holiday and other sundries. That's just with some of the average expenses that are out there. So with that being said, how many years would it take an average person with average spending to save enough for a deposit for an average property in London? That amount is 11.71 years. So when they say 10 years to get the property ladder, they're probably not lying. Should we do some maths for Texas? Let's get into it. So the average price of a property in Texas is around $196,902. Now, when it comes to requirements for a property, we'll go with the example of only needing to put down a 10% deposit. That would need you to put down $19,000 and some change. Now, take away the average property price from the 10% deposit required. That would leave you with a requirement of a mortgage of around $176,000 and 902 pence, which seems relatively reasonable if we're talking about averages. Now, when it comes to even getting the lending, again, we can use the assumption that a mortgage lender would only give you 4 times your salary or 5 times your salary. If it's 4 times your salary, you'd need to be earning $44,000 a year, and if it's 5 times your salary, you'd be needing to earn just over $35,000 a year. Now, why I think that figure is really important, because when you take into consideration the average salary of someone working in Texas, which is $105,000, you'll be shook. It's absolutely crazy to me, particularly in relation to how much the average cost of a property is in Texas. Now, that basically blows my example out of the water, so I thought I'd use a slightly lower salary of someone who's on an average salary of $69,807. Now, their take-home pay after taxes would be about $55,307. So the average living expenses of someone who is living in Texas is $10,330.08, which is just about $860 a month. So the average rent in Texas is $1,118, and that brings it to a total of $13,416 a year. So in total, the average cost of living in Texas is about $23,000 a year, which is about £18,000. It's significantly less. That would mean on that average salary of the person with 1 year experience of the $69,000 and some change would mean that it's possible to save $31,000 a year. Wild in these streets. Which means it would be possible to save $2,635.01 per month. That would mean, based on those average numbers, it would take less than a year to be able to have enough to put down on a deposit for an average house in Texas. That's some simple maths. Okay, in conclusion, I'm moving to Texas. Now, yeehaw, giddy up cowboy, wear my boots, wear my hat. I'm sorry if I've offended anybody in Texas, but those numbers to me are beyond exciting and probably quite shocking. Now, in all seriousness, of course, in these examples, I am working with averages, and you can definitely find properties in London that are under 660,000. I'm an example of that. I was able to purchase a property for 220,000. And I'm sure that not everyone is on 100,000 a year in Texas, and I'm sure that there are people who are definitely earning $30,000 and $40,000 a year. And it's really interesting to see how much disparities in wealth and property prices can impact some of the stats that are out there. But I definitely think it's worthwhile looking at what numbers really look like. So guys, if you want me to share some numbers of another location, let me know in the comments where you're from. If there are any other costs or numbers you want me to look into, I will do that. I will explore, do the research, and we can get into some more simple maths. So guys, I hope you enjoyed that video, and in the meantime, I will catch you all later. Bye.